Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Under Pressure, Hidden Health Dangers of the Holidays. My name is Holly Foxworth. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm also the Marketing Communications Director here at Axiom Medical. I'm so glad that so many of you have joined us today. So whether you're here to find ways to manage some of the holiday stress that you may be feeling, or you're just here to enhance your overall well-being, you definitely came to the right place. So we're ready to share some of these insights and give you some tactics that you can start applying immediately. So today we're going to go through several things. We're going to talk about the complexities of the holiday season, both physically and mentally. But our goal really is to ensure that your team not only finishes this year strong, but also that they step into the new year healthier and more energized than perhaps what they were even this last year. So to help us navigate through this conversation, we brought together a stellar panel. We have three different speakers that are going to be joining us, and you'll meet them momentarily. The first will be Dr. Scott Cherry. He's our Chief Medical Officer, and he's going to speak to the physical health challenges. We'll have Mark Robinson, which is our Axiom CEO. He's going to speak to the mental health piece. He's also going to talk about seasonal affective disorder and overall employee well-being. And then we have Dara Wheeler, which is our Chief Marketing Officer. We have so many CMOs on here, CMO, and she's going to speak to the vital roles of leadership and culture in navigating some of these this holiday season that we're experiencing. So just a quick few notes and navigation tips that you may want to know about on your screen here. First of all, many of you have asked for information about ergonomics, and we are delivering on your requests. So we are kicking off the 2025 webinar season with a session called Next Level Ergonomics. And so that's going to take you far beyond the basics that everybody has heard about and read about. We want to give you a program that you can implement within your own organization to help prevent some of those injuries. So that session is actually going to be on January the 9th at 1:00 p.m. Central. And to be able to register for that, it's really simple. You'll look to the right-hand side at the top box. There should be a blue box that's there. It'll have the name of the webinar with an RSVP button below that. And so you'll just press that button. It immediately gets you registered. It reserves your seat, and it even sends you a calendar invite. So it's a very easy process. You don't have to enter any additional information, and we would love to see you there. Additionally, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that we've included some resources. So the first one there is the presentation deck that we are looking at today. So in case you want to download that and share that with your team, or you want to give that to someone else, you're welcome to do that. Below that, there's also some helpful blogs about the holiday season and how you can navigate that for your employees. Finally, engagement. So engagement has really been the key to our webinar community here. And so we want to hear from you. So the one place that you want to make for sure that you can locate on your screen is the Q&A chat box at the very bottom. So it's usually at the very bottom on the left-hand side where it says ask a question. And that is where we want you to ask questions. We want you to share your stories. If you've got stories about employees that have fallen on black ice, if you've had stories about depression during the holidays, any kind of tips that you have that you want to share, all of these help. And it helps not only us, but it helps your fellow colleagues that are on here as well. So make for sure that you know where that is. We want to hear from you, and do not be shy. All right, so with that being said, I am going to go ahead and let you meet our speakers. We'll start with Dr. Cherry, their Chief Medical Officer.
Thank you very much, Holly, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Cherry. I'm Axiom Medical's Chief Medical Officer. My professional background is I'm board certified in preventive medicine, public health, and occupational environmental medicine. And I've been supporting military, industrial, and corporate operations for the past 15 years, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Fantastic. Dara, do we have you on here as well?
Yeah, thank you, Holly. Hi, everybody. My name is Dara Wheeler. I'm Axiom's Chief Marketing Officer. I've been here for about 18 years serving our clients and a lot of different capacities, but really excited to talk to you all as we near the holidays, and we can come up with some ways some tactics to stay safe during these holiday times.
Okay.
And Holly, Mark is still having some challenges, so we'll just keep going. I think Scott's section's up first.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, definitely. All right, well, Scott, before I get to you, we'll just kind of go over and again remind you of some of the topics that we're going to go through today, which include some of the holiday stressors. We're going to talk about understanding physical and the mental health challenges that you may be already experiencing. We're going to talk about some of the tools that you can use to manage those challenges effectively, holiday specific strategies for supporting your team, and then also preparing your workforce for a productive post-holiday transition. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Scott, and ask you, talk to us about what some of our employers may already be seeing within their organizations here in this holiday season.
Yes, some of the stats I'm going to be presenting here kind of have been surprising to me throughout my lifetime. When I was a medic in the military, I was friends with a lot of different healthcare professionals. And I remember a lot of them, when we were having discussions talking about the holidays were actually not their favorite time of year. They either felt lonely or they felt very stressed. And that really hit me. It's very counterintuitive. And so really the stats that we're presenting today support that. So almost half of people will have increased stress during the holidays. And I think now we see that even in just traffic patterns or at the stores, everyone's kind of rushing around our holidays where people should be thankful or counting their blessings, but it's kind of that rush to meet the family or cultural expectations. And what comes along with that is actually a large increase of absenteeism. So people are actually absent more than planned during the holiday season. And usually when you talk about absenteeism, you can also talk about presenteeism. And that word always kind of, I like to re-explain because it's counterintuitive as well. So when there's also this presenteeism goes up, and well, the way I think of that word is people are present but not productive. And so it's a false lure of your human capital being at work. And so that actually dramatically goes up too. And it's akin to the stress, which affects people's mental health, which cascades into that increased presenteeism, which really correlates to lower productivity. So they're essentially absent, but still present. And then lastly here, 64% are reporting mental health symptoms worsening during the holidays. And I think for the last couple of years, we've really presented a lot on the challenges and how common mental health challenges are in America. And so, seeing this spike during the holidays is even more concerning. So it's another reason to be aware and to try to educate and find ways to help manage that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that saying about the holidays being like juggling ornaments. Where it's like without balancing them perfectly, one is bound to break in the floor. But you're exactly right. Talk us through then the physical health risks that are associated then with the holiday season.
Yeah, so we have slips, trips, and falls as really our first topic here. And I know previous to this webinar, we spoke about really slips, trips, and falls are the most common nature of injury out there in workplace and probably in personal life as well. So this just actually gets amplified during the holidays. And, we've talked about the correlation with mental health and stress increasing the propensity to workplace injuries. And this is just something to be magnified during this time. I'm kind of guilty of overindulgence, not so much alcohol, but usually with sweets or just food. And, it's one thing if you're at home and you can fall asleep after a large meal, but it's another thing if you do the lunch overindulgence or mid-shift, right? If you have 24-hour shifts at your workplace, right? It's easy to overindulge if people are bringing in large meals or desserts. Your blood sugar can spike, and that kind of makes you less attentive. And then when your sugar crashes, then you can really become very sleepy. So if you're doing safety sensitive work, or even if you're just kind of in an office setting, the chances of slips, trips, and falls dramatically go up. Coupled with all that is fatigue, right? So if we're more stressed, if we're not sleeping well, fatigue from balancing work demands and holiday obligations just is another thing on our plate to manage. All these lead to increased work-related injuries with distraction and rushed behaviors, things like that. So, and then, on top of it, there's a lot of deadlines at the end of the year. So those that are in the field are rushing to get those goals completed. And then even in the office work, a lot of sedentary behavior, which also is not great for our physical or mental health. So there really is this large amount of increased tax on our physical and mental capacity.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that really has came up a lot recently that you've heard a lot of controversy about is the overindulgence piece and about the alcohol. And so I'm interested from some of our guests that are on the webinar here to share us. Do you guys have holiday parties, as an organization? And if so, how do you manage that? How do you manage the risk? Do you send them home in Ubers, or do you not serve alcohol? I'm really interested in what some of you have kind of gone to there. So I'd love to see that. Definitely. All right. Well, let's talk about how it is that you can stay safe from these.
Right. And, some of us never get exposed to the ice and snow, and so we're fortunate. But a lot of the country will deal with adverse weather along the lines of snow or, freezing rain and ice. And so again, slips, trips, and falls are the biggest cause of work-related injuries. So when the conditions really are poor, our footwear is absolutely crucial. So re-looking at your footwear, making sure it has the best type of traction in those conditions is, absolutely critical. And then you can also perhaps make sure that there's processes for putting down salt or anti-slip mats, things like that. Railing. In one of my last posts in the Army, there was kind of known workplaces that doors would be blast open by wind, and also just places were easily frozen. And so people were slipping and sliding to get in. So having a railway put in may be a big change for that. And then, again, drinking, culturally, I think there may be a paradigm shift, but I think still culturally, alcohol is part of our culture day to day during celebrations, things like that. But being aware that this is going to add into the stresses of the holiday stresses. And so just be very mindful of that affecting your ability to manage, stress and things like that. And then, sleep is really always what we pay for all of our overambitious lifestyle and a to-do list with sleep, I believe. And I think that potentially is going to change over time, where it was kind of a badge of honor that people could survive with very little sleep. And now we're seeing sleep is one of the most important things for our body's wellness, health, regeneration, productivity, things like that. So having really good, what we call sleep hygiene, which is keeping all of the things in our environment to promote really good sleep, like going to bed at the same time, not having the TV in the bedroom, using the bed only for sleep, and actually having really good circadian rhythm exposures. And so don't expose your eyes to bright light within a few hours at sleep with your phone, or getting up and getting sun exposure when you first wake, things like that. And lastly, it's just education, teaching and sharing that, hey, this is a stressful time. We're more apt to get injured. We're more apt to overindulge, and we're gonna, again, trade our sleep for trying to get all these things done. I think that's really something that could be shared in more broadly in the workforce.
Absolutely. Garth had mentioned that no, that they do not serve alcohol during holiday parties. Thank you for that feedback, Garth. That's interesting. Are you guys seeing a lot of slips and falls as well, increasing this last month? Let me know about that as well, and tell us about anything that you're seeing on your end there in your organizations. We are excited to have Mark Robinson join us. He is our CEO, and we'll let him introduce himself first, and then he can get into some of the speaking points here. So welcome, Mark. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I apparently am a CEO, but not a tech competent person. So, and that is despite at one point in my past being actually a CIO. So I have no excuses. I'm getting old, I guess. Anyway, I got it all working, and here we are.
Awesome.
I'm really happy to have the chance to be part of this conversation, because for me, whilst the holiday season is joyous, it isn't joyous for everybody. And some people bring that experience and negative experience of the past to the holiday. But some people experience negative events during the holiday, workplace stress and accidents as an example. And I think we're uniquely well positioned to see and understand the consequences of both what the individuals bring with them and what the workplace does to them in this stressful period.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Talk to us about the seasonal affective disorder.
Oh, well, I spend I'm obviously, from my accent, not from here originally. The Texas does not extend that far east. But I come from Wales, which is often despised. Yes, it's often despised, but it's also often described as a cold, dark place with a lot of depressed people. So I'm very familiar with seasonal affective disorder. It is essentially the lack of sunlight that causes people to be less able to process their environment and the events that happen to them. It's depressive in nature, and generally speaking, it includes a degree of disconnection from the moment, from being in the moment, and a strong focus on the internal condition that the individual's experiencing. So seasonal affective disorder in the more northern latitudes drives all kinds of behaviors that are unhealthy for individuals, everything from excess indulgence in recreational substances of various kinds as a form of self-medication, all the way through being more likely to be violent towards oneself or others, and indeed also being, as I said, less mindful and less present, and therefore having a higher propensity to injury. And the less mindful and less present thing, of course, it's not just seasonal affective disorder that can drive that. Any of us can be less mindful and less present for a whole bunch of factors, including hangover, thinking about what's the long list of personal items that you have to do in order to be able to have a successful holiday, thinking about the long list of work items that you have to process in order to be able to go to do the personal things, and even a concern that you're failing, a misplaced concern that you're failing. The absence of co-workers is a big factor during this period, I think there are a few things that workplaces can directly affect. One of them is in enforcing the right protective gear, footwear, etc., as Scott mentioned before. Another one is teaching, like using this period as a time to double down on teaching safety consciousness, safety awareness, risk reduction techniques. But I think perhaps the biggest one of all is expecting the same amount of work to be done by less people, especially in safety critical situations. And it is surprising how many workplaces do, in fact, drive that kind of behavior. And nothing drives risk like being overwhelmed or underqualified for tasks that you are required to undertake. So if you're a safety, if you're a supervisor, if you're a workplace manager of any kind, be mindful of the fact that you should expect lower rather than higher productivity during this period. You should not compensate for absence of key employees by simply forcing the rest of your workforce to accommodate that workload.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And, you know, speaking about the seasonal affective disorder, I remember we went to, we had a client visit this last year, and they were in North Dakota. And specifically, we had spoken with some of their employees. They had had a recent suicide, and they had said that specifically that because of the time change and the limited amount of light that they were having there, that they all felt that level of depression, and that they felt like that it was going throughout the whole organization, that they really needed help on that area. So it makes a huge difference.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Talk to us then about some of the strategies then on how it is that you can manage some of these things.
As an individual, there's not much you can do about sunlight. It's either there or it isn't. But as a workplace, you can look at the need for employees to be exposed to natural light. Again, harping back to days when I lived and worked in places much further north, including Alaska, there are times when there is only very limited sunlight available. And you, as a workplace manager, you may look to try to schedule breaks for your employees to be outside and exposed to light during times when perhaps that wouldn't conventionally be a break time. Going to work in the dark, working in an environment without much, if any, natural light, and then going home in the dark, for anybody who has any propensity to seasonal affective disorder, and for all of us regardless of that, you know, you're really exacerbating the situation. So as a workplace manager, anything you can do to help drive exposure to natural light is a really positive thing. You know, I don't have much of a strategy around money. It can be a stressful time at the holidays for those that are constrained financially. And the only thing I can suggest is that you pre-manage everybody's expectations of you, so that you do not, in fact, go into debt or overburden your finances and leave yourself worried and stressed through the holiday and beyond into the first few months of the following year. And relaxation is clearly a critical thing. One of my practices is to actually take periodic breaks for meditation. TM particularly, I find to be a really great and useful stress reliever for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody can or wants to do it. But whatever it is that drives your own relaxation profile, that is what you should consciously make time for in order to at least offset some of the stresses that you're experiencing. And I think on this slide, perhaps the single most important thing is support. You need to work your network, your support structure. You need to be consciously engaging with those people around you who are supportive of you. You need to ask for help if you need help. You need to be honest and direct with everybody about what your capability and capacity is at this time. I think these are good rules, incidentally, all of the time. but particularly at this time, people who are not usually overwhelmed or overstressed often become both of those things. And if you then ignore your support network and submarine in order to try and directly, personally cope without help, you're setting yourself up for an outcome that isn't where you'd like to be.
Definitely. You know, I've always appreciated the culture here, especially when it comes to the PTO. I've heard you say it multiple times about, you know, PTO is there to be taken. It's not there to be saved up. And I don't know if there's something that you want to share about that, your strategy, and how much of a difference that makes as well for the relaxation piece.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Look, I said several times already, I'm not originally from here, although I am a proud citizen. And if you look on the wall behind me, that flag is a 44 state flag from, I think, 1904. And it actually has bullet holes in it. It's not a fake. but look, I love this country and I love everything about it. But I think there are elements of the work culture which, whilst they feel virtuous in like, oh, I don't take my vacation, I just work harder and all of that. And there are elements of the management culture which actually creates the expectation that people will behave like that I do not think are healthy. I think as an individual, I realized fairly late in my own life, well into my 50s, I realized that actually working till 3 in the morning, getting up at 6 in the morning and doing it all again for like 20 days in a row was really not very healthy, and that I wasn't bringing my best self to work. Yeah. And I also realized that I wasn't setting boundaries. And, you know, work is important. I don't artificially divide work and life. They're two aspects of the same experience that we all have. But work is important, but so is living. And if you do not set boundaries whereby at these times I'm working, at these times I'm not. I have PTO. It's a legal entitlement. It's a contractual entitlement. I will take my PTO. In the end, doing those things, the boundaries and the time away from work, hugely improve your productivity during your time at work and have a really massive impact on your mental and emotional state. So I strongly, strongly support taking PTO. I do encourage all of my team members and all of their team members and the whole of our company to do that. And I also encourage setting boundaries. And as a leader by example, I very rarely email people outside of normal working hours. I don't phone people at 2 in the morning because I had a bright idea. I try to keep work within reasonable boundaries of work. Some roles require extended hours or offset hours, but essentially, I do not expect our team members to be so committed that their mental and emotional health and therefore their physical health deteriorate because of that.
Absolutely. Good points.
Holly, one note about the financial support. One of our amazing HR team members sent out an EAP reminder the other day, and most companies have HR teams that you can reach out to that have EAPs that might also include financial support if you're struggling there. I forget how much they have within some of these programs, like legal, financial, different aspects of support out there that your companies likely provide.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good points. Scott, I'm going to come back to you. We've had some stories that came in here that you may be interested in from a physical aspect. But Jenny had mentioned that she had fell down on outside in the stairs on Sunday night because there was freezing rain and she didn't hold on to the handrail. So are you seeing that? Do you have any recommendations? Obviously, the handrail would be helpful in that situation, but is there any other recommendations that you would give in terms of how to walk specifically or a particular type of footwear that maybe would be more helpful in that type of scenario?
You know, there is some kind of interesting ways to walk called like a penguin walk, where you can really carefully walk intently with trying to really center your center of gravity over your front, leading foot. But one thing that was hitting me just in general was you should train as you fight. So you should use the handrail when there's not poor conditions. Whenever there's a handrail, I'm constantly using it. I always think of minimizing my physical risk. And so don't be looking at your phone going up and down the stairs. I've worked at places where the culture was to actually call others out if they were crossing the street, looking at their phone, or going up and down stairs without using the handrail. So just getting in a use of always maximizing what's around you with regard to the safety measures that are available. Obviously there are footwear that is much more akin to all of the different elements versus just something that's maybe stylish, that has very slippery soles and things like that. But again, I do think focusing on slips, trips, and falls prevention is, absolutely critical in this time, but really year round.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, footwear that's safe in slick environments like oil-covered surfaces, etc., is also safe in icy environments. So if you have footwear for your workplace that makes you safer if you're in an area where fuel spills happen or oil spills happen, or that is generally low friction, that same footwear will be helpful in ice and snow.
Good point. Garth, you always have the best comments. He had said, we train to walk like a penguin. He said, other employees think that I'm crazy, but they always remember it. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. But Haley was saying that they are seeing a lot more injuries due to inattention. So I guess being preoccupied with other things that are going on there in the workplace. She had mentioned that holiday prep can be distracting and that they've seen it impacting the workforce big time. So any recommendations on how you could redirect, some of that attention and really make for sure that your employees are focused on what's going on, especially from a safety sensitive position?
For me, I'm realizing really the trend that our phone is really an extension of us, and you really have to be intent in disconnecting from your phone. So I've made it a point to not have my phone on me when I'm doing, just living my life, walking my dogs, going to the gym, things like that. But I think really trying to disconnect when you're just walking and not multitasking, looking at emails or other types of things with the phone during kind of just transit from one place to another. And I think that dramatically helps with mindfulness too. I think people's minds are really inundated with multitasking and information overload by the end of every day. And it's because we have such ease of access of information through our phones and computers. So really setting boundaries, just when you're perhaps just going from one office to another, going out to lunch, like leave your phone in your desk. And I think it will dramatically give you those micro breaks from information overload.
Mm-hmm.
As a manager or a supervisor, mindfulness check-ins are a great way to help people realign that actually they are now in a hazardous environment and that they now need to be focused. So when you first come to work, you're really checking in with your whole team or with any individuals that you feel may be not 100% present, and you're taking them through. There are a whole bunch of different exercises, mental exercises that can be done to help people focus and be mindful and be present. Just mantras of things like, yeah, now I'm here, and this is a place where I can get hurt if I don't focus on what I'm doing here. So I need to put aside all the other things that are worrying me and focus on what I'm doing here. That just even simple things like that, affirmations, those will help people understand that their context has changed As humans, we're not great at context switching. So we tend to carry behaviors from one context into the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you recommend some additional safety tool talks or things like that that you would have maybe at the beginning of the day or at different intervals during the day to maybe just kind of bring awareness to refocus?
Yes, I think any time that is identified as a time where more injuries naturally occur, and whilst we have things like the holidays, and we also have like the day after 4th of July and other, other occasions, the day after Super Bowl Sunday, that kind of stuff. Every workplace has its own rhythm and it has its own hot spots, times and places where more accidents occur. And I think anytime when you're in one of those time cycles, doubling down on tool talks and on safety strategy and focus for the individual worker, I think that will pay dividends.
Absolutely. And then going back to the support piece that you had mentioned previously, I wonder whether also those that maybe feel isolated or really are going through things at that time, they can really be distracted. So I would assume that would have also a factor on the safe practices of what they're doing during their day.
Totally. Isolation kills. It's as simple as that. Isolation is one of the leading causes of suicide. Well, enablers for suicide, not cause. And isolation you can be isolated surrounded by people, right? If you don't have connections, if you don't feel positively around the people that are your co-workers, if you have a home environment which you're single or you're essentially isolated through unhappiness at home, all of those types of isolation can drive increased risk. And that risk is because you're not mindful or you stop caring about your own safety, which is another thing, right? There's a psychological effect that is around feeling like you deserve to be hurt, right? That you're not worthy, that you're not worth, as a human, you're not valuable. And that kind of, positive self-talk and being encouraged and coached in positive self-talk can really help in those situations. Also, getting professional help if you need it. More people go into crisis over this period than I think at any other time in the year. And being able to go and reach out for professional help through your EAP program, perhaps, we provide that help outside of EAP. We have a team who are available, who are trained in mental health and emotional support, who are able to talk to any of our people who are struggling. And that's something I would really strongly coach employers to consider. Mental health is physical health. Being mindful is being safe. You can't separate these things. You can't put one in a box and deal with that and ignore the others. It's either a virtuous circle or it's a spiral of despair.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Well, Dara, talk to us about how it is then that we can support our teams throughout this time period. Tell us how we can fix everything and make the world right.
We'll fix it all. It's super easy. Some ideas we have here when you think about if you're leading a team or you have teams of people that what you volunteer with, it doesn't matter what, you've got lots of teams that are out there that these are ways to tap into supporting groups during the holidays. One way is to think about, obviously in the US, a lot of people celebrate Christmas, but there are other holidays. And so I know, our kids all get exposed to a lot of different fun holidays. So but don't just assume how people celebrate. Ask and see if you can celebrate some different ways of celebrating this time of year. So that's always fun. Think about creating a stress toolkit. So this could be, like you were saying, maybe doing more safety talks, but also thinking about creating a holiday stress toolkit. Think about ways that you can reach into that toolkit during the holidays, time management, mental health tips, like Mark even mentioned at the beginning, meditation. What are some of the things that you can reach to when you are feeling really stressed or overwhelmed? A lot of you've attended many of these webinars. Les and Holly and Scott and I talk a lot about, working your list, or I call it working your list. So instead of having your toolkit, for me, it's a list. It could be mental. It could be an actual list of things that you reach back to if you're stressed. So for me, it's some key things like, have I exercised today? What is my sleep? Scott mentioned sleep hygiene. What are some of the things that you can reach back to cycle back into a more positive frame of mind? And then some low pressure activities. So encouraging connection with some low pressure activities. There's a lot of big activities out there. We talked at the beginning a little bit about holiday parties. And there's a lot of these big events and different things. I like to hold off on a holiday party with my team. We have so much going on this time of year that we're going to wait until January to celebrate as a team. And it's not that we don't want to celebrate this year and the way it's gone, but there's a lot going on. So there's ways to have fun together as a group with low expectation or low pressure to not put or pile on more this time of year. The Surgeon General, I know came out and said that parents are a little bit in crisis, and we've been mostly joking in our team chat, but there are some pretty interesting events going on in some of the schools. Like, this week, all of a sudden you have to dress your kid in all these different things. And like, you've got PJ Day and you've got all these fun things out there. And that just adds another layer the last couple of weeks, which is really fun. One of our team members, Seth, said that one of his kids has a dress like your favorite idiom day. And so the rest of us thought that was pretty great. And they were kind of different idioms that they could dress up at, like bird in the hand and different things like that. But adding all of that to this time of year is a lot. So trying to find ways so that you don't have to keep kind of tapping into a lot of different things. I like to say that it's okay to be a mediocre parent once in a while, not always overachieve in some of those areas.
Absolutely. I would think also the opportunity to be able to communicate with your team, and be so open about some of those challenges that you're facing, that would be very helpful as well. I know it is for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Normalizing the conversation around levels of stress, levels of mindfulness, sleep hygiene, making that just an acceptable and routine part of communication is really important. One of the things I try and do at this time of year is hold myself accountable by inviting other people that I'm connected to hold me accountable. So, I have a good friend, not an Axiom person, who we talk pretty well every day for a minute or two. And at this time of year, one of the questions is, did you get enough sleep? Right? And we've done it deliberately because it's easy not to get enough sleep. And I think if you can program your connections to help you be accountable, as well as just being there for you if you need it, being much more proactive. And if you can offer that same level of proactivity to others without being intrusive, without being offensive, then I think that can be helpful too.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Darren, talk to us about how it is that we can prepare for some of these holiday transitions. So not just the time that we're going through right now, but also what we're going into the new year.
I'm going to start with the last one. And apologies for some of our formatting. Our On24 platform has done some fun things with our numbering system here. So ignore the 111.
They're all equal priority, so.
They are. They're all equal. We can't put any one on top of the other. So I'm actually going to start with the third, the goal setting. I was just talking a little bit about this. When you think about the end of the year, budget setting and all this stuff, and then what we come into next year, I think that even just having a framework for kicking off a year is really helpful. We're in marketing and sales, and so we like to have a kickoff, and I think that sets the tone for the year for all of us. But in addition to doing it as a group, it's also a lot of one-on-one time and making sure that we do a lot of goal setting. And goal setting is it's not just about creating anxiety and stress for the individual. It's, you don't want them to put pressure on themselves, but it's about setting a cadence of knowing what we want to achieve and when to know whether something's successful. And with my team, we do goal setting that's not just professional, it's personal too, if they feel like sharing with me, because then as a level of accountability, I can help them check in and make sure that they're achieving what goals that they've set out to achieve. So we talked about not calling them New Year's resolutions, but calling them 2025 goals. And so that way you have a cadence of what that looks like. Coming out of the holidays, there can be some stress and burnout and fatigue. So just making sure that you're checking in with your team, having those one-on-ones, and providing examples of ways for people to check in. So one example for us at Axiom is we have what's called Wellness Wednesday, and it might be a small group each week, but it's a way to check in with each other outside of work topics to make sure that everybody's doing well, or cooking some fun recipes, because usually one of us is like Mark. So it's not just preparing for holidays, it's preparing for that re-entry. The joke on the marketing team on Mondays is, especially after a holiday, is what is it we do again? Who are we? What are we? Gotta kind of poke ourselves, remember who we are and what it is we do here. But it is a good reminder of kind of resetting and remembering what it is we have. And those one-on-ones or small group check-ins are really helpful. A lot of people in development and IT know that there's like this concept of a stand-up. We do it in our executive meetings. We have a morning stand-up basically that's a check-in, and that keeps everybody kind of focused, checking in with each other and ready to go for the week.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What would you say then? What would you say for in terms of those that are really having some post-holiday fatigue? It's like we worked so hard to get to the end of the year, and then we're working on what we're going to do for 2025. But then at home, you also have the pressures of all of your family. You may have people coming in that you're cooking for. You're doing presents. You're having all of this travel. So what kind of recommendations would you have there?
It's like Mark said. Check in with your friends and ask them, are you sleeping?
Yeah.
My team knows very well, if I am not sleeping well, I will put myself to sleep early that night, because I'm like a toddler who probably just needs to go to bed. I've reached the end of my tolerance and resilience. And so it's time to go to bed early and take care of myself. It's going back to that checklist and your list, going back to the things that will reset you. So exercise, sleep, water, healthy food. These are the things that if you can kind of cycle back into those habits, they will structure and help you kind of reset and become resilient in your day to day. Scott or Mark, any other ideas there?
I think from a manager perspective, a leader perspective, have reasonable expectations, right? Don't expect the day after New Year's Day to be the most productive day of the year. Don't expect people that first week back to be 100% on their game. If they took time out and, usually taking a vacation, you expect people to come back refreshed. Often they come back tired and needing a vacation to get over the vacation, right? If you didn't take time off and you juggled family, friends, dinner, social obligations, paying the credit card bill, all of that kind of stuff, you're equally likely to be tired and not at the top of your game. So as a manager and a leader of people, have a realistic expectation and work with people to get them back up to that kind of performing level that they were at before the Grinch before they actually enjoyed their vacation time and their PTO. I think that's really important. And we as leaders, these are responsibilities. If you believe in servant leadership, which I do, looking for ways to uplift your team, looking for ways to help them through whatever they're going through, being rational and reasonable in your expectations of people, those are the kinds of things that will pay huge dividends for you in the 365-day performance of those people and in their willingness to go the extra mile when you need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is just self-awareness. And I think from a theoretical perspective, we look at our own selves and our own performance as constant and consistent throughout the day, the week, the month. However, we are almost infinitely complex. And so there's be times when we're going to perform much more efficiently and effective, and other times where we're going to struggle to hit that same level of performance. And so one, to be aware of it, to not beat yourself up about it, but then also to focus and maybe even set up strategies that will help you predict when you're going to perform well or poor. And one insight I would say is, coming through my medical training, we were heavily sleep deprived, and just feedback I would get would be the days when I wasn't on call and maybe not even on a tough service, so I actually had pretty good sleep. People would always ask, "Oh, are you doing okay? You look, destroyed or really tired." And then the days that I seemed to be sleep deprived, people said, "Oh, you look great." And so it was very, I don't know if I look better under adrenaline versus a calm state, but for me, it's almost counterintuitive. I may actually perform better under stress than when things are doing well. But I think just self-awareness in general, and it may change over time in phases of your life, but really self-awareness is really crucial in your professional and personal life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because of recent focus in the medical profession on the cumulative adverse impact of those extended sleep deprived periods in terms of relatively higher levels of suicide in the profession during that phase of their careers, and other forms of emotional stress that can lead to substance dependency and other things. I think some people thrive in that kind of stress. I think everybody thrives with a kind of stress that is perfect for them. It's often different for different people, but some people absolutely are crushed by those kinds of stresses and destroyed.
Good question.
Yes, agree.
Yeah.
And we also may just start getting used to being in those kind of suboptimal settings. So it may take an adjustment period to switch over to a more harmonious environment or situation,
Good points. Good points. We've had several different questions that have also came in. One was, if you're seeing that your employees may be struggling, what kind of questions can you ask them? What should you be asking them?
Are you doing okay? It's the number one question, right? And make it clear, it's not perfunctory. It's not just going through the motions. You have to express care and concern. Right? Are you going okay with warmth? Is a whole bunch different than a flyby, like, you doing okay? Right? So actually, and then following through. If you get engagement, if the person opens up to you, be there for them. Work is work, but work is also a bunch of humans all together in the same place. And we often forget the human part of that and try to dehumanize work. And I think the more that you as an individual can be there for your people, the more that you can be open, engaged, listening, supportive, willing to help them get help if that's what they need, or just being an ear, just being there to listen. I think that's really just the number one thing you can do.
Absolutely. Two more questions. There was one that said, besides the things that some of you had mentioned with sleep, what are your own strategies for avoiding burnout as leaders?
One of mine,
sorry.
I'll say is try to limit each day's the hours I'm sitting at my desk. So it gets really accumulates over time. So for me, it's taking frequent walks. Back to the seasonal affective disorder, if I could take a few minutes each day to just, even if it's a quick walk around, and Dr. Kurte always says, have your running shoes on so that if you have time for a quick walk around the block, do it. That really helps me because it gets me up away from my desk for a second and sets a boundary, but it also gets me that sunlight that we need this time of year. That's one of my favorite techniques.
Yeah. Any others?
Burnout is one of those really abused words. And I think if I remember rightly, we did a webinar on that maybe 18 months ago. There have been a bunch of studies that are myth breakers around burnout. But if we use burnout in the sort of general sense of being more tired and less capable than you usually are and less motivated, I think, look, be self-aware. Scott already mentioned this. Actually monitor yourself, know what your state of mind is, question yourself about it. If you find yourself in a state of mind that is unhealthy, then take action. It's amazing how even the smallest actions can help. Like, okay, for the next 1 week, I am going to stop work at 5 o'clock exactly, turn my email off, and go do things that fulfill me. Go to the gym, go for a walk, go play chess, go do whatever those things are that please you. The other thing is really researching for balance. If you're out of balance as a human walking along, what do? You try and throw yourself back into alignment. You try and get your center of gravity back over your penguin feet. And really, as a psychological human, the same thing is true. If we have allowed one aspect of our life to dominate who we are and how we value ourselves, we are out of balance. And we should then work towards refinding our center, or the place where we feel best about ourselves, because that will help everything else that we're doing, including our ability to be present and effective at work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I would add would be just tactically, I think there are some things that are absolutely vital for us to have kind of a holistic wellness completeness. And so part of it is exercise, and it doesn't have to be something very big. It can be small little things like at a minimum walking, but even just some physical exercise like 30 minutes every day, with moderate physical activity, whether it's weightlifting or walking, bike riding, things like that. That's absolutely critical as part of our wellness kind of stool. And then sleep is really critical. And what really affects my sleep, and I think it affects a lot of people's sleep, is eating too close to bedtime. And we don't really appreciate our digestive system enough, but most of us are eating from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep. So it's about an 18 or 20-hour cycle. And so our digestive system is working, it's being overworked, right? And so if you can actually only eat for like 8 hours, and especially 3 or 4 hours before going to bed, you're actually at a much calmer state. Your body is much calmer and you sleep much better. And those are tactical things, and not to get overly philosophical, but I think having an overall strategy about your wellness, and I think it's akin to knowing yourself, but it's knowing your why, where you can bear any how. So why do we work? What do we live for? That will give us a lot of driving guidelines for when things get tough. And so we should revisit that, right? And I think a lot of people haven't visited it ever. I know I didn't visit it until much later in my life, and I keep revisiting it. But it does make a big difference when you have that large strategic view of what our life looks like personally.
Absolutely.
Scott, your point about digestive system is really good one. Mm-hmm. There's been a huge amount of research over the last decade or so that shows that your gut and your brain are not really separate, right? Mm-hmm. We're used to thinking of them as separate organs that do completely separate things. but your gut sends nutrients to your brain. It sends other chemical signals to your brain. Your brain sends signals to your gut. If those are out of whack, if you eat too much unhealthy food, if you eat at the wrong time, if you're trying to process this lead weight in your stomach because you ate at midnight and went to sleep at 10 after, all of those things, they're all going to influence your emotional and mental state.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think many of us have felt like we've had bad dreams after eating too late, you know, so
Yeah,
that's a good example.
Yeah, good points. Well, I appreciate all of you joining us today, especially our panel. You guys were amazing, and I appreciate you as an audience that have joined in. We wish you happy holidays, and we look forward to seeing you in January. If you haven't already, make sure that you press that button to get signed up for the ergonomics webinar that we're going to kick off in early 2025. So thank you for joining us again. We look forward to seeing you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I feel really privileged to have the chance to chat. The team don't often let me do this, so yay.
We loved having you.
Yes.